First Contact Protocol. The pristine halls of Haven 9 had never seemed so quiet. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the massive observation window, her reflection ghosting against the backdrop of swirling nebula and distant stars. After 15 years of military service and diplomatic training, she still couldn't quite believe she was here, the first human representative to serve on the Galactic Council's most prestigious peacekeeping station. Station Director Vextel's crystalline form shimmered with barely contained agitation as he reviewed her credentials for the fourth time. His translucent appendages flickered through various spectrums of light, a clear sign of distress to those familiar with Luminian body language. Your species achieved FTL travel merely 50 years ago, he stated, each word precise and measured. And now you seek to join our peacekeeping forces. Sarah maintained her diplomatic smile, though her jaw tightened slightly. Earth believes we have much to offer the Galactic Council, Director. Our adaptability and problem-solving skills. Yes, Vextel interrupted, his crystalline structure flashing amber, the Luminian equivalent of a dismissive wave. We've all read the reports about human adaptability. Tell me, Commander Chen, is it true that humans voluntarily expose themselves to toxic substances for pleasure? If you're referring to caffeine, Director, I'd be happy to explain the cultural significance of coffee in human society. Sarah kept her tone light, though she'd had this conversation countless times during the application process. A species that deliberately ingests nerve toxins for enjoyment. Vextel mused, his form now pulsing with deep purple concern. And you wonder why some council members have reservations. A soft chime interrupted their conversation as Chief Security Officer Kirks entered the observation deck. The massive Archean's chitinous armor clicked against the polished floor, all four of their primary eyes fixed on Sarah with undisguised curiosity. The humans' quarters are prepared, Kirks announced, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Though we're still unsure about the gravity requirements, the files suggest humans prefer approximately 1/3 of standard station gravity. Sarah coughed politely. Actually, Earth's gravity is about 3 times your station standard. We're a high-gravity species. The silence that followed was absolute. Kirks's secondary eyes blinked rapidly in succession, a sign of extreme surprise in Arxens. Vextel's crystalline form briefly flickered to pure white before stabilizing. Impossible, the Director finally managed. Our scans clearly show you have no internal support structure, no exoskeleton, no gravity compensation field. You're telling me your species evolved on a death world? We prefer to call it Earth, Sarah replied with a slight smile. And yes, though I understand why that might be concerning, I assure you, I'm fully capable of adapting to station gravity. My training included extensive. You will need to undergo a full medical evaluation. Vextel interrupted, his form now cycling through emergency patterns. Kirks, alert Medical Bay 7. We need a complete bioscan, strength assessment, and already completed during my orientation at Gateway Station. Sarah interjected smoothly, pulling up the relevant documents on her datapad, along with psychological evaluations, stress testing, and compatibility assessments. I believe you'll find everything in order. Kirks leaned forward, examining the data with professional interest. These numbers, they can't be correct. According to this, you can maintain consciousness under forces that would crush most species' internal organs. Human adaptability, Sarah explained, unable to keep a hint of pride from her voice. We evolved to handle extreme variations in pressure, temperature, and gravity. It's one of the reasons we believe we'd make excellent peacekeepers. Or excellent weapons, Vextel muttered, his crystalline form darkening with concern. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Director, if I may speak frankly, humanity has spent the last 5 decades proving we can be trusted members of the galactic community. We've followed every protocol, signed every treaty, and maintained peace even when provoked. We're not here to fight. We're here to help maintain the peace you've worked so hard to build. A tense moment passed as Vextel studied her, his crystalline form shifting through various analytical patterns. Finally, he seemed to reach a decision. "Very well, Commander Chen. You will be assigned to Security Team Delta under Kirk's direct supervision. But understand this, you are here on a provisional basis. Any sign that humans are not ready for this responsibility." "I understand completely, Director," Sarah assured him. "I won't let you down." As she followed Kirk's toward the security wing, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the whispered conversations and hastily averted gazes that followed their progress. Let them worry about human capabilities. She hadn't come here to frighten anyone. She'd come to build bridges. Though, judging by the way several junior officers nearly tripped over themselves trying to maintain a safe distance, those bridges might take a little longer to build than expected. "Your first shift begins in 3 cycles," Kirk's informed her, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "I suggest you use that time to acclimate to station protocols and familiarize yourself with your team members." "Actually," Sarah said, "I was hoping to visit the training facilities first. I understand you have some impressive simulation technology." Kirk's antenna twitched, a sign of amusement or alarm. Sarah wasn't quite sure which. "The combat simulators are rated for standard species parameters. They might not be challenging enough for your capabilities." "Perfect," Sarah replied cheerfully. "That means I'm less likely to break them while I'm learning the system." As Kirk's led her toward the training deck, their chitinous armor clicking with barely suppressed agitation, Sarah made a mental note to request coffee plants for the station's hydroponics bay. After all, if she was going to challenge their preconceptions about humans, she might as well start with the small things. Besides, she had a feeling everyone on Haven 9 was going to need a good cup of coffee very soon. Testing grounds. The training simulator hummed to life around Commander Sarah Chen, its holographic walls shimmering with barely contained energy. In the observation booth above, Kirk's and a team of station scientists huddled around monitoring equipment, their expressions ranging from professional curiosity to barely concealed anxiety. "Beginning baseline assessment," announced the station's AI, its voice carefully neutral. "Please note that all safety protocols are engaged at maximum capacity." Sarah stretched, hiding her amusement at the extensive precautions. The training room had been reinforced with enough energy shielding to contain a small nuclear explosion. Apparently, the station's engineers had taken the Deathworld classification quite seriously. "Ready when you are," she called out, settling into a ready stance. The first simulation materialized, a standard obstacle course designed to test agility and reaction time. Sarah could hear the murmurs of surprise from above as she launched herself through the course, her movements fluid and precise. What seemed like imposing barriers to most species were hardly challenging for someone who had grown up in Earth's gravity. "Impressive," Kirk's voice crackled over the comm. "But perhaps something more substantial." The obstacle course vanished, replaced by a combat scenario. 3 holographic opponents materialized, each representing a different species class. Sarah recognized the combat forms: a Vexthar warrior, known for their devastating energy attacks; a Nexian speedfighter, capable of moving faster than most species could perceive; and a towering Kraxixi bruiser, whose natural armor could withstand direct hits from small spacecraft. "Standard peacekeeping containment scenario," the AI explained. "Neutralize the threats without causing permanent harm." Sarah's lips curved into a slight smile. This was exactly the kind of challenge she'd been hoping for. The Vexthar warrior moved first, launching a barrage of energy bolts that would have vaporized most organic beings. But humans hadn't survived on Earth by being easy targets. Sarah rolled, her movements utilizing the high station gravity to her advantage, making the energy attacks seem almost slow in comparison. The Nexian blurred into motion, attempting to flank her. To the observer's shock, Sarah tracked its movements easily, her reaction time matching the supposedly superior alien reflexes. Earth predators had trained humanity's ancestors to process threats at incredible speeds, a fact that seemed to have been left out of their species brief. "Impossible," one of the scientists muttered. "Her neural processing speed exceeds our projections by several orders of magnitude." The Crack-Sexy charge, its massive form promising instant devastation. Sarah didn't try to match its strength. Instead, she used its own momentum against it, a simple redirect that sent the behemoth crashing into the Vexthar's energy field. The resulting feedback loop disrupted both holograms, leaving only the necks in. End simulation, Kirks commanded, their mandibles clicking rapidly. Commander Chen, please report to the observation booth immediately. As Sarah made her way up, she could hear the excited chatter of the scientific team. Their instruments had recorded everything: her enhanced reaction time, the natural strength that came from evolving in high gravity, the intuitive combat awareness that humans took for granted. These readings are unprecedented, the lead scientist, a Luminian named Zexra, declared as Sarah entered. Their crystalline form sparkled with scientific excitement. Your species' capabilities, they defy our conventional classification systems. We're full of surprises, Sarah agreed modestly. Though I should mention that was a fairly basic demonstration. Most human peacekeepers are capable of much more. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Kirks's mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement or alarm. More. They finally managed. The simulation was set to maximum difficulty. For standard species parameters, Sarah pointed out. But humans are anything but standard. We evolved to be persistent predators, capable of adapting to almost any environment. What you just saw was the result of millions of years of evolution on a world that tried very hard to kill us. And yet you describe Earth as a paradise. Zexra noted, their form shifting to analysis patterns. Because it is, to us, Sarah explained. High gravity means stronger bones and muscles. Extreme temperature variations led to incredible adaptability. Countless predators taught us to think quickly and act faster. Even our toxin resistance developed because our ancestors insisted on finding out which plants were edible through trial and error. Trial and error. Kirks's antenna twitched violently. You mean your species deliberately consumed unknown substances to determine their effects? How else would we learn? Sarah asked innocently, enjoying their collective shock. It's called the scientific method. Though I admit, the coffee discovery was probably more accident than science. Before anyone could respond to this disturbing revelation, the station's AI interrupted with an urgent announcement. Alert! Unauthorized access detected in Training Bay 3. Security protocols breached. Emergency containment failing. Kirks's professional demeanor returned instantly. Status report. Training drone malfunction, the AI reported. 3 heavy combat units have broken containment. Standard security measures proving ineffective. Threat level: extreme. Sarah was moving before Kirks could issue orders. I'll handle it, she called over her shoulder, already sprinting toward the emergency. Wait, Kirks shouted after her. Those drones are designed for military-grade combat training. They're capable of. Perfect, Sarah's voice echoed back. I was starting to worry this job might be boring. As she disappeared down the corridor, leaving behind a group of stunned aliens, Zexra's crystalline form flickered with what might have been amusement. I believe, they observed quietly, we may need to recalibrate our understanding of the term Deathworld. Kirks could only click their mandibles in agreement as they hurried to follow their newest and most unpredictable team member. Something told them life on Haven 9 was about to become far more interesting than anyone had anticipated. The challenge. The scene in Training Bay 3 was pure chaos. 3 military-grade combat drones, each standing 4 meters tall and bristling with weapons, had broken free of their containment fields. Their adaptive combat protocols had merged, creating an improvised battle network that was proving resistant to standard shutdown commands. Sarah arrived just as the first drone smashed through a reinforced security barrier. Emergency force fields flickered and died, overwhelmed by the raw power of the malfunctioning machines. Station security personnel had established a perimeter, but their weapons were barely scratching the drone's military-grade armor. Status report. She called out to the nearest officer, a young Arkshan whose antennae were practically vibrating with stress. 3 Mark VI combat trainers, full weapons suite, adaptive shields engage. They've somehow overridden their safety protocols and merged their combat matrices. We can't get close enough to. The officer's explanation was cut short as one of the drones launched a barrage of plasma bolts down the corridor. Sarah moved instinctively, pulling the Arxian to safety behind a support column. The plasma fire left glowing holes in the station's reinforced walls. "Has anyone tried talking to them?" Sarah asked, earning several bewildered looks from the security team. "They're machines, Commander," Kirks explained, arriving with a squad of heavily armed peacekeepers. "Their cognitive functions are limited to combat scenarios." Sarah grinned. "Perfect. Then they'll understand this." Before anyone could stop her, she stepped out from behind cover. The drone's targeting systems locked onto her immediately, their weapons powering up with an ominous hum. "Combat challenge initiated," Sarah declared clearly, knowing the drone's programming would recognize the formal declaration. "Single combatant versus 3 units. Close quarters combat only. Accept or forfeit." The drones froze, their processors working through the unexpected scenario. Their original programming included protocols for honor duels, a necessity when training warriors from species with strict combat traditions. "Challenge parameters accepted," the lead drone announced, its weapons powering down. "Close quarters combat protocols engage. Lethal force authorized." "Commander, this is suicide," Kirks protested. "Those units are designed to simulate the strongest warriors in the galaxy, even with your unique capabilities." "Trust me," Sarah said, rolling her shoulders. "I've been wanting to try this since I read the station's training specifications." The drones moved with perfect coordination, their massive forms displaying impossible grace for machines their size. The lead unit launched a devastating series of strikes that would have pulverized most organic beings. Sarah flowed around the attacks like water, using the drone's own momentum against it. The second drone attempted to flank her, but Earth's predators had taught humans to track multiple threats instinctively. Sarah ducked under its grappling attempt, simultaneously redirecting the third drone's charge into its companion. The impact sent both machines staggering, their adaptive shields flickering from the unexpected collision. "Impossible," someone in the growing crowd of spectators muttered. "She's matching their combat speed." What the observers didn't understand was that Sarah wasn't actually trying to overpower the drones. She was letting them do most of the work, using their own strength and momentum against them. It was a fundamentally human approach to combat. Why waste energy when you could let your opponent defeat themselves? The lead drone recalibrated its approach, its AI adapting to her tactics. "Combat efficiency exceeds known parameters," it announced, initiating maximum output protocols. Finally, Sarah grinned, something interesting. What followed left even the most experienced warriors in the crowd speechless. The drones moved with devastating precision, their attacks coordinated perfectly through their shared battle network. But Sarah matched them move for move, her human reflexes and Earth-evolved muscles, allowing her to operate at speeds that seemed to defy physics. When the lead drone overextended on a particularly powerful strike, Sarah saw her opportunity. She grabbed its arm, using its own momentum to send it crashing into its companions. The impact disrupted their shared network just long enough for her to access a maintenance panel and execute an emergency shutdown. The drones froze, their combat protocols disengaging as base programming reasserted control. The sudden silence was deafening. "Combat challenge concluded," Sarah announced formally. "Opponents neutralized without permanent damage." She turned to the stunned security team. "Though you might want to check their network protocols. That merger shouldn't have been possible." Kirks approached slowly, their mandibles clicking in what might have been admiration or disbelief. "You deliberately provoked a close-quarters fight with 3 military-grade combat units." "Of course," Sarah replied cheerfully. "Long-range combat would have damaged the station. This way was much cleaner." "Cleaner," Kirks repeated faintly. "You engaged 3 combat drones in hand-to-hand combat because it was cleaner." Also more fun, Sarah admitted. Though I should mention someone might want to recalibrate their impact compensation. The third one's left arm servo is a bit sticky. Before Kirks could formulate a response to this casual critique of military-grade combat units, an alert chimed through the station's communication system. Commander Chen. Director Vextel's voice carried an unusual edge. Report to my office immediately. It seems your performance has attracted some unexpected attention. Sarah nodded to Kirks as she headed for the exit. Have someone check those network protocols, and maybe increase the difficulty settings. They seemed a bit basic. As she walked away, leaving behind a crowd of stunned observers and 3 deactivated combat drones, Kirks turned to their security team. Update the station's combat rating system, they ordered. Create a new classification above extreme. Label it simply human. No one argued. Breaking barriers. Director Vextel's office was unusually crowded. In addition to the director himself, whose crystalline form was cycling through various shades of agitation, the room contained representatives from at least 6 different species. Most prominent among them was High Commander Zarkax of the Vexthar Defense Fleet, whose scaled armor gleamed under the office's soft lighting. Sarah stood at ease, maintaining her diplomatic composure despite the tension in the room. She'd expected some fallout from the combat drone incident, but this level of attention suggested something more significant was brewing. Would someone? Zarkax rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of military authority. Explain how a single human managed to defeat 3 military-grade combat units using nothing but primitive physical combat. The drones were malfunctioning. Sarah offered helpfully. Their network protocols were operating at 147% of standard efficiency, interrupted a Nexian technical analyst, their holographic form flickering with excitement. The merger of their combat matrices actually enhanced their capabilities beyond normal parameters. By all calculations, they should have been unbeatable in close-quarters combat. Humans don't put much stock in should be, Sarah explained. We prefer to focus on what's possible. Possible. Zarkax's scales shifted, displaying patterns of disbelief and intrigue. You defeated 3 elite combat units because you didn't believe they were unbeatable. No, Sarah corrected politely. I defeated them because they were machines following programming. They fought according to rules and patterns. Humans, we tend to be a bit more adaptable. The room erupted in overlapping discussions, each species trying to process this information through their own cultural and tactical frameworks. Director Vextel's crystalline form pulsed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as a headache. The Galactic Council, he finally announced, cutting through the chaos, has taken a particular interest in this incident. Specifically, they're interested in the implications for future peacekeeping operations. I would think, Sarah ventured, that demonstrating effective non-lethal combat techniques would be seen as a positive development. That depends, Zarkax replied, on whether those techniques will be shared. Ah. Now they were getting to the heart of the matter. Sarah had wondered how long it would take for someone to make this connection. Earth would be happy to establish a joint training program, she offered. Though I should warn you, our methods might seem unconventional by galactic standards. Unconventional. A Luminian scientist's form flickered with curiosity. How so? Well, Sarah smiled. How do you feel about parkour? 2 hours later, Training Bay 5 had been transformed. Under Sarah's direction, maintenance crews had reconfigured the space into what she described as a basic obstacle course. To the assembled aliens, it looked more like an elaborate death trap. The purpose, Sarah explained to her increasingly concerned audience, is to learn how to move efficiently through any environment. Humans develop these techniques naturally, but they can be adapted for any species. By jumping off walls, Kirks asked, their mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. Among other things, Sarah confirmed cheerfully. The key is understanding that obstacles aren't barriers, they're opportunities. Watch. What followed was a demonstration that had the station's medical team on high alert and the scientific observers frantically recalibrating their instruments. Sarah moved through the course like water flowing uphill, using momentum and gravity in ways that seemed to defy physics. "This is just the basics," she explained, landing gracefully from a particularly impressive flip. "Once you understand the principles, you can adapt them to any environment or situation." To everyone's surprise, High Commander Zarkax was the first to step forward. "Show me," he demanded. What followed would later be described in official reports as an unprecedented breakthrough in interspecies combat training. Unofficially, it was the first time in recorded history that a Vexthar warrior had been seen doing a backflip. By the end of the day, the training bay had become a hub of activity. Warriors and peacekeepers from various species worked together, sharing techniques and discovering new ways to adapt human movements to their unique physiologies. Even Director Vextal made an appearance, though he insisted he was merely observing for administrative purposes. "I don't understand," Kirks admitted to Sarah as they watched a crack 6C bruiser attempt a wall run. Yesterday, most of the station was terrified of human capabilities. Today they're learning that those capabilities can be shared, Sarah finished. "Humans don't just adapt. We help others adapt too. It's kind of our thing." The Galactic Council will want to implement this training across all peacekeeping stations, Kirks noted. "Good," Sarah grinned, "because this is just the beginning. Wait until I introduce them to human martial arts." "There's more." Kirks's antenna twitched violently. "So much more," Sarah assured them. "Though maybe we should wait until everyone masters the basics before we get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." As if to emphasize her point, a crash echoed through the bay, followed by the distinct sound of a Vexthar warrior discovering that gravity remained undefeated. Sarah winced sympathetically. "All right," she called out, moving to help. "Remember what I said about tucking and rolling? Let's try that again." New horizons. 3 months after Commander Sarah Chen's arrival, Haven 9 had transformed. The once rigid training protocols had evolved into something entirely new, a fusion of traditional galactic peacekeeping methods and human adaptability. The station's corridors now featured modified gravity sections, allowing different species to experience and train in various environmental conditions. Sarah stood in the newly christened Adaptive Combat Center, watching as a mixed group of aliens and the station's second human recruit, Lieutenant James Rodriguez, demonstrated what they dubbed Zero Parkour. The sight of a Vexthar warrior gracefully maneuvering through null gravity alongside a Luminian life form would have been unthinkable just months ago. The Galactic Council's quarterly report just arrived. Director Vextal announced, his crystalline form shimmering with what Sarah had learned to recognize as pride. Haven 9's new training protocols have been officially recognized as the standard for all peacekeeping stations. "That's wonderful news," Sarah replied, hiding her amusement as a crack sexy attempted a zero somersault. "Though I hope they included the safety protocols we developed. Not everyone adapts at the same rate." Indeed, Vextal agreed, watching as Kirks helped the crack sexy reorient himself. "Though I must admit, your species' approach to learning, this trial and error method, has proven remarkably effective. Sometimes you have to fall down to learn how to get back up," Sarah said. "It's another human thing." "Like coffee?" Vextal asked dryly. The station's hydroponics bay now included a thriving coffee plantation, and the synthesizers had finally been programmed to produce a decent espresso. Several species had developed quite an appreciation for the beverage, though the medical team still insisted on calling it controlled substance, human grade. Their conversation was interrupted by High Commander Zarkax's arrival. The Vexthar warrior, once skeptical of human methods, now served as an unofficial ambassador for the new training programs. "The first Joint Combat Unit is ready for inspection," he announced, his scales displaying patterns of anticipation. 20 warriors from 10 species, all trained in combined combat techniques. Sarah followed them to the main training arena, where the inaugural class of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force's new Special Operations Unit stood at attention. The sight was impressive, each member representing the best of their species, now enhanced by human combat methodology. "Begin demonstration," Zarkax ordered. What followed was a display of coordination that would have been impossible 3 months ago. The unit moved as one, each member's unique abilities complementing the others. A Nexian speedfighter used human parkour techniques to launch a Luminian light warrior into position, while a Kraxixi bruiser provided mobile cover for a Vexthar energy specialist. "They've adapted the techniques perfectly," Sarah observed proudly. "Not adapted," Kirks corrected, joining them. "Enhanced. Your human methods didn't just change how we fight. They changed how we think about combat itself. And not just combat," Director Vextal added. "The principles you've taught. Adaptability, creative problem-solving, working with environmental challenges rather than against them. They're being applied across all peacekeeping operations. The Galactic Council has approved the expansion of the program," Zarkax announced. "They're calling it the Adaptive Peacekeeping Initiative. Each major station will receive human instructors and implement these new protocols." Sarah watched as the demonstration concluded, the unit moving with a fluid grace that combined the best of human innovation with alien capabilities. So humans are officially part of the peacekeeping force now. More than that, Vextal's form sparkled with amusement. "You're being promoted. The Council wants you to oversee the implementation of the new training programs across all major stations. The first human chief combat instructor for the Galactic Peacekeeping Force," Kirks added, their mandibles clicking happily. "Though you might want to choose a less terrifying title." "I was thinking Adaptive Training Coordinator," Sarah suggested. "Less intimidating." "Speaking of less intimidating," Zarkax rumbled, "the Council has also revised Earth's classification. You're no longer listed as a death world." "No." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What are we now?" "A crucible world," Vextal explained. "A planet that forges its inhabitants into something stronger through adversity. The classification is being added to all official documents." "Along with a note about coffee being a controlled substance," Kirks added dryly. Sarah laughed, watching as Lieutenant Rodriguez led the unit through a cool-down exercise that looked suspiciously like Tai Chi. "So what's next?" "The Council has approved the construction of 5 new training facilities," Vextal said. "They want to expand the program to include civilian applications. Apparently, several species have expressed interest in human athletic techniques. Olympic Games are going to be interesting next cycle," Sarah mused. "Indeed," Kirks agreed, "though perhaps we should master basic parkour before attempting what you call competitive gymnastics." As if on cue, a crash echoed from the training floor, followed by the distinct sound of a Kraxixi discovering that Zerog somersaults were harder than they looked. "Back to basics," Sarah sighed happily, moving to help. "Though maybe we should start with the fundamentals of falling safely." "A very human concept," Vextal observed. "Learning to fall in order to rise higher." "That's us," Sarah agreed. "Always falling forward. It's how we learn, how we grow, and apparently, how we teach the galaxy to do parkour in zero gravity." As she helped the Kraxixi warrior reorient himself, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Humanity had come to Haven 9 hoping to prove they belonged among the stars. Instead, they'd shown the galaxy a new way to reach for them. And somehow, that felt exactly right.